Hey there everybody, Trendane here. Now, a few years ago, this would have been in November of 2010, I believe. Oh, that seems so long ago. I decided to create a small, very short series here on YouTube to basically teach people who have never played an MMO what the core function, just the absolute basics of gameplay of an MMO are, so that you can have, a 70-year-old grandmother who wants to just get in there and start playing a blood elf or whatever, but they've never played a game like this, and so they don't even know where to start. That's why I created this series. Well, the series originally. But like I said, that was in November of 2010. Cataclysm hadn't even come out yet. So I decided what I would do is I would update it. I mean, we've had 2 expansions come out since then. We had Cataclysm, we had Mist of Pandaria, and we've had multiple patches. So what I decided I was going to do was I was going to kind of update everything and bring it all into modern day, as it were. So what I'm going to teach you in this first part, in part 1 of the new WoW-To, is we're going to cover server selection, and we're going to cover the types of servers, their populations, and their geographical locations. And we're also going to cover character creation, ranging from the various factions, genders, races, classes, and the limitations of races and classes, how to customize your appearance and name your character, and getting into the game. So that's what we're going to cover in this very first part. So with regard to server selection, how do you know which server you want to play on? Well, if you see a window very much like this, which you may not, the first time you fire up the game, you may get a very, very different window. But the basic function of it is the same. Basically, they want to know what kind of realm you want to play on. That may not be an issue. If you're joining friends who are already in-game, then all you need to know is the name of the realm on which they play. Then you can sort, which you can do by clicking these buttons. You can sort up or down, in this case, by realm name, alphabetically, or reverse alphabetically, by type, again, and I'll cover the types in just a moment, by whichever servers you have that have characters on them. I do have a few characters on different servers, and I'll show you that in a minute. Or by population. Now, let's start with this one. If you've got friends that you are joining in-game that are already there, all you need to know is which server you need to go to. You click on that server, you go in, you create your character, and everything's fine. Let's say you're going in solo. You don't really know anybody in-game, you're just going in just to play and have fun. Well, then you need to decide what kind of gaming experience do you want to have, and that will determine the server type that you choose. Now, as you can see from this list in this little pop-up, you have normal, which is also called PvE, which stands for player versus environment. And what that basically means is there are no specific set of rules that govern how players interact with each other. The next one down on the list, PvP, is a different story. On a PvP server, you are constantly flagged in a player versus player state, which means that at any point, anywhere in the game, a player of the opposite faction, be it Horde or Alliance, whichever one you belong to, a player of the opposite faction can attack you at will, if they choose to. The next one down on the list is the RP, or the role-playing realm. Now that's if you want to, play an elf, and I mean get into the theatrics of it. You want your character to behave as an elf or an undead, not a zombie, but one of the undead, one of the Forsaken would behave, or you want to be a Tauren, or you want to be an orc or whatever, but you want to play the character in character, very immersive all the time. Then you would choose an RP realm, because that's where you're going to find other like-minded people who are also interested in playing their characters in character as much as possible. And then finally you have the RP PvP realm, which is the role-playing player versus player thing, where it's basically smishing the RP and PvP server types together, so that you still have everybody role-playing their characters, but there is also the element of PvP. Makes it a little bit more dangerous. And it can be kind of fun. Now, if you have characters, obviously selecting this one will sort them according to numerically how many characters you have on different servers. For example, I have 8 characters on this server. I have 2 on this one and 2 on this one. If you were to reverse it, I have none. Anyway, but as you can see, these 2 are both RP servers. That's where I tend to hang out. And then this one is a normal or PvE server. If you were to choose if you're trying to choose a server based on its population, you would sort by this. Now these are new servers. They've just been brought online recently, and they don't have a very high population level. As such, there will be less competition for, like, let's say you get a quest to go out and bring somebody 8, haunches of venison. And you go out and you're, killing various deer or whatnot that live in the area where you're questing. Well, if there is a high population on the server, there will be a lot of people competing, people constantly killing these deer left and right because they're all on the same quest. Lower population servers, you'll have less of that. The trade-off is that you don't really get to interact with as many people because there aren't as many people there. But there's also a lot less likely that you will wind up getting locked out, because if you reverse this the other way, you will see that certain things, their population is full, meaning that you can't make a character on these, or there's so many people on that you will wind up going into a queue. You try to log into the server and you have to wait 5 minutes before you can even log in. There is also a state called locked, which you don't see here, but that is also one. Now, the other thing to remember is, depending on where in the world you live, the geographic location, which is covered down here, be it United States, Oceanic is like places, I believe, like Australia and possibly England. I think Europe gets their own servers, but Oceanic might cover some of those. Latin America and Brazil. Now, obviously, if you choose Latin America and Brazil, you're going to, I hope your Portuguese is good, because you're going to need it. Or your Spanish, relatively. Now, for the purposes of this tutorial, this how-to on World of Warcraft, we are going to choose the Shuhalo server, just because it's a new server and it's very, very easy to get in. Now, a little bit of lore for those of you who don't know. Shuhalo is what the Tauren race is called. That is their name for themselves, the Shuhalo. That is the Tauren. Now, let's go in here. Typically, when you choose a server, you will come to a window like this. Now, the first time you fire it up, you may well see a window like this, but it'll have a character standing here, and it'll have, a gender selection up here. It'll have the 2 different factions on stream. Actually, I'll show you exactly what it will look like. It'll look kind of like this. Now, the background may be different, because what if it randomly selected a human? So here we are. We're back in the Alliance thing. You can see the cathedral in Stormwind right back there. But, depending on whether you choose the Alliance or the Horde, you get these 2 different backgrounds. This is in Orgrimmar, which honestly does not make a whole lot of sense, because of, Orgrimmar being kind of torn apart. But blah, let's move on. Depending on which of these 2 factions you choose, you get the varying backgrounds, because the factions are constantly at war. The only time you don't have that is if you choose a Pandaren, and they appear in their specific environment, because they start on the island of Pandaria. Now, if you choose to be, depending on which faction you want to be, you would start out, say, as a human hunter or something. Perhaps a female human hunter. Now, you would automatically start out here, and you are part of the Alliance. If you decided you wanted to instead be an undead mage, you would start out in Silverpine Forest over on the other continent. You would not start out in Orgrimmar. And you would be a member of the Horde. However, if you elected to be a Pandaren, you don't specifically have a faction. That's why they're off by themselves down here. When you finish the Pandaren starting area, you have to choose which faction you want to join. So if you are joining friends and you're playing a Pandaren, you need to make absolutely certain you pick the right one. Because otherwise, excuse me, you will not be able to talk to them if you join the wrong faction. The two factions cannot communicate with each other at all. It is not allowed. So if you're joining people who are already playing there, you need to make absolutely certain you pick the right faction, or you will never be able to speak to them. And they will probably rip off your face anytime they see you. Well, now let's say once you've selected which server you want to be on, and now you get to choose which alliance you want to be, or not which alliance, but which faction you want to be. Do you want to be Alliance or Horde? Which gender do you want to be? Which race and which class? How do you choose? What difference does it make? Well, let's say, for example, you want it to be a human. Okay? Humans can be warriors, paladins, hunters, rogues, priests. They cannot be shaman. They can be mages, warlocks, and monks, but they can't be druids. And they can be death knights. But what if you wanted to be a blood elf? Well, they can be pretty much the same thing. But what if you wanted to be, say, a gnome? Okay, now this changes things quite a bit, because they can be warriors, rogues, priests, mages, warlocks, monks, and death knights, but they cannot be paladins, hunters, shaman, or druids. Similarly, dwarves can be everything but druids. So what you have are called race class limitations. You can either choose which class you want to play. Let's say that you know, in these kinds of games, you always play a hunter. Okay, well, the only one you can't be, obviously, is a gnome. Everybody else can be hunters, except for gnomes. They're the only ones who can't do it, I think. I'm pretty sure that everybody else can be hunters. Yes, everybody else can be hunters except for gnomes. They're the only ones who can't. I guess they're just, you would think, being that close to the ground, they would be able to track something. Anyway, so you can either choose which class you want to be, or you could choose which alliance or which faction you want to be a part of, or you could choose which race you want to be. You know, mix and match it. Play around with it. See what you want to be. Let's say you wanted to be a male, let's say Tauren druid. Okay. Goodness, beg your pardon. So once again, we have a Tauren druid. Now, if you need more information, amazingly enough, you can click on the More Information button, and it opens up these two panes. And it'll tell you everything you need to know about, you know, whichever race and class you have selected. It'll tell you exactly what they're good at, what they're not good at, what roles they want to play, or what roles they can take on, or a given class is good at. Now, let's say, for example, you want to be a healer. Well, you would have to be a priest. You could do healing or damage. You could also be a monk, in which there's kind of what is referred to as the Holy Trinity, or the Trinity, which are tanks, healers, and damage. So depending upon which class you take, kind of lumps you into those particular roles in parties and whatnot. Now, what you can do is pick whichever one you want to be and go with it. In this case, I'm going to go with a male Tauren druid, but I don't like the way he looks. Now you come down to customize. Now this will be the last step of character creation, and that you've selected what race you want to be, you've selected what class you want to be, you've selected which gender you want to be. Now you can still alter your gender here while you're doing this, during your customization. You can either click randomize, or you can go through and select, skin color, face, horn style, horn color. Now you notice that as I'm clicking these options over on the side change depending on which piece you're working on. So let's say, for example, you wanted to go with where's the kind of a Guernsey kind of look, the black and white one. Where is it? That one. Also one of the ones I often refer to as an Oreo cookie cow. Face, no, that looks horrible. I don't like that face. Let's go with, yeah, it was not bad. Horn style. Ugh, no. I like those horns, and I like them black. I've always liked these I think it's because of the movie Legend. I think that's what it is. Anyway, horn color, they're obviously black, but you could choose from any color that's available there. And for facial hair, according to Tauren lore, which there is plenty of lore out there if you ever want to learn, they get one braid for each fight, or each victory they've had in combat. I like having 3 braids on my Tauren because it makes it seem like they're more experienced to me. But I hate having a nose ring. Unfortunately, that's the only option with 3 braids. They all have nose rings. Ugh. So if you want to, and you don't really care what they look like, you can click randomize, and it'll go through, and it'll change everything around and whatnot. No, don't like that hair. No, there, that hair. This horn style down here. Thank you. Okay, we'll go with him. And what about his name? What are we going to call him? Well, now you can either type in a name and hope that it's there, or you can click randomize, and like this says 8quan, or whatever that is. Okay, Dulles, which sounds like an airport. Now, the problem with clicking randomize is that the list of names that it draws from, that name may not be available. This is another reason to try to go with lower population servers, because the chances that that name is available is a lot higher on a low population server. Let's give it a shot and see what happens. Oh, hey, what do you know? It's there. Cool. Awesome. All right, so now you see the background has changed. Everything is... this is the Tauren starting area called Mulgore. You see this back here in the background behind this big window. You can see kind of that hillside, that cliff with that big leather windbreak up there. That is Red Cloud Mesa, where all the Taurens start out. So that's where we'll be once we start this guy. But let's look at some of the other elements first. You've got your character. You can spin him around and look at him. Now you notice he's wearing something completely different. Excuse me. He's wearing much more primitive robes than when you first selected him. He was wearing kind of that purple and gold thing. That's high level gear that you'll see what your character looks like once he gets to a higher level. But this is what he starts out with. Different characters, different races and stuff, they start out with different stuff. Now, if you decide you don't like the character, you can click on delete character, and then you just have to type in delete, and then this will light up and you can click OK, and you can back up and start all over again. Or you can simply click back, which will take you back to the login screen. Click create new character, and you can create a new character. Big surprise there. Or you can go to change realm, and if you decide you want to go to a different realm, you can do that. If you decide instead that you want to just go ahead and jump into the world, you click that, click on enter world, and you will go directly into the opening cinematic. No, sorry, not the opening cinematic, the racial cinematic. Every single race in World of Warcraft, they all get their own racial cinematic, and it's this nice flyby where you kind of fly over the starting area, and you hear this really nice narration by an actor whose name is Earl Bowen. Now, for those of you who might know the name, Earl Bowen is the guy who did the voiceover for the Wrath of the Lich King intro cinematic, where you see Arthas sitting on the throne and he's all frozen. He's all clutched up in ice and everything, and he breaks free, and he goes and he raises the dragon from the dead out of that glacier. That is Earl Bowen. He's the one that's talking to Arthas, his son. But what you may not know is that Earl Bowen is also the actor who, in all 3 Terminator movies, played Dr. Silberman, the psychiatrist that was evaluating Sarah Connor and got stabbed in the knee with a ballpoint pen. Same guy. Very nice little bit of trivia for you. The only other thing I can really tell you about right now is this down here, which is the menu button. If you click on that, it opens up this. You can actually watch all the cinematics right there. It's fantastic. Or you can open up the system thing. Now, my system is a fairly decent system, so most of the stuff is on Ultra. You can get, go through and play around with these. If you know what you're doing, you can mess around with this stuff. But if you don't know what you're doing, just let the system recommend what it thinks you should do. Otherwise, don't mess with it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go. I'm going to go ahead and end this here. Now, what I encourage you guys to do, even if you already know that you want to play this specific race, this specific class, I still encourage you to make, one of each of the different things, if only to watch the racial cinematics so that you can get an idea of what the race's backstory is and where they came from and where they are, because it might give you a little more variety, maybe even a deeper sense of empathy with some of them, because some of them have had a very hard life. Anyway, yeah, so go and check out all those things. If you don't feel like making a character solely for the sake of watching the racial cinematic and then deleting the character, you could probably find them on YouTube as well. But definitely check them all out, because they're actually quite cool, and it's neat to know what lore goes on behind the different characters. So you go ahead and do that, and when we come back, we'll go ahead and enter the world, and I will show you the how the user interface and how you interact with the game world itself. All right? Until next time, be careless.